This is 7th grade lesson 4.1. It's actually day 2. In this lesson, students will use the percent equation to solve real-world percentage problems that include solving for tips, commission, and sales tax. The lesson or the standards covered in this lesson are 7RP3 and 7EE3. The page numbers are page 158 through 163 and pages 89 through 92. You'll also be using a worksheet that has some examples for tip, commission, and sales tax for this lesson. Okay, in this lesson today, we're going to be using some real world scenarios as to why we would ever want to find the percent of a number. So some very general things that come into play would be sales tax. So when you go out and you buy something, you have to pay sales tax on those purchases. So today we're going to be working with sales tax and a final or a total purchase amount. We'll also be working with tips, so finding how much money you might want to leave for a tip for a waitress or a waiter. And then commission. And commission is something that it's a process or a way that people get paid through the sale of different things. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start out with sales tax. So here the example that we have is, it says, what is the tax of a $4,080 item if the sales tax is 8%? And then it does also ask, what will our total cost be? So our first step is to go through and understand that whenever we work with percentage, almost all of the time, if it's working with another number, is we need to realize that we're going to be multiplying between those, because really here, I want to find out what 8% of $4,080 is. Okay, so when I'm working through this, if I want to find out 8% of 4,080, remember, of can be substituted in with a multiplication sign that we learned yesterday. So 8% would be 0.08. Of means times 4,080. So we're going to go ahead and multiply those out. So 0.08 times 4,080 gives me 326.4. So remember, we are working money. So when we have that 0.4, we have to remember we are working with money, that's actually 40 cents. So the tax is $326.40. So this might be something like, maybe it's a used car, maybe it's a sports utility like a ATV type thing. If you were going to go buy one of those, you also have to pay the tax on them. So if you wanted to buy this $4,080 maybe four-wheeler, you wouldn't be able to just buy it for the $4,080. You're going to have to pay tax on top of that. So you have to realize you're going to need another $326.40 to cover the tax. So in the end, they want to know, what would our total cost be? Because really we paid for the four-wheeler or whatever this item is, and we paid for the tax. So we're going to have to go ahead and add those two together. So I'm going to just leave my 326.4 on my calculator. I don't have to put the 0 on. In the end, I'll just have to add it on again when I write my answer. So I'm going to add 4,080 to that tax that we just found out. My final answer is it would cost me $4,406.40. Okay, so that's working with sales tax. The key thing on this is to pay attention to what they're actually asking you to solve. Sometimes they'll just want to know what the tax is, and sometimes they will want you to find the total cost. There is another method for finding the total cost, but for right now, because of the way that we've learned, and we haven't learned another process yet that we'll maybe do later on in the chapter, this is the method that we're going to use, okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and try another one of these with sales tax. Oops. Okay, so here's our next one. It says, what is the tax of $189.89 item if the sales tax is, once again, 8%? So we want to figure out 8%, so 0.08 of times $180.89. So I'm going to go ahead and punch it in on my calculator the way that I see it. So 0.08, remembering to change our percent to its decimal form, times 180.89. And when I do that, this is what I see on my calculator, 14.4712. You have to remember we are working with money. Okay, money does not have 4 decimal places. So paying attention to the fact that when we work with money, we want to see the 2 decimal places. You always round to the second decimal place. So we're going to look at that number behind it and decide, are we going to round that 7 up to an 8, or will the 1 tell it to stay a 7? It'll tell it to stay a 7. So $14.47. Okay, that's how much tax we paid. Now it is also asking, what will our total cost be? So when we go through and we find our total cost, remember, we're going to take and add these two together. Okay, so we're going to add our $14.47 for tax plus our $189 or $180.89 item. And that is $195.36. Okay, so this might be maybe a bike. Maybe you went down to Hardware Hank or over to Walmart and you wanted to buy a bike. Well, you can't just walk in there with the $181. You're going to need $14.47 for tax. So you almost need to really walk in there with close to $200 in order to walk out with that bicycle. Okay, so I want you guys to try one on your own, working with sales tax. Okay, so what is the tax of a $20.50 item if the sales tax is 7%? So remember, what is it that we want to know? Well, we want to know 7% of $20.50. So go ahead and find the sales tax on that, and then also find the total bill. Okay, so here you should have ended up with $1.44 if you rounded it correctly. If you had $1.43, close enough, but realize that it was 1.435, and that 5 would tell the 3 to go up to a 4. Then your total cost would have been $21.94. So you're going to pay almost $22 for that item that was $20.50. Okay, so that's working sales tax. Once again, when you're working percentages, even though this wasn't set up in the format that we worked with in the first part of the lesson, percentages almost always you're working with multiplying by the decimal form or times that whatever it is, whether it's a total price, whether it's a tip or on a bill or commission that we'll work with in just a little bit. So here it says if you want to leave a 15% tip on a meal that costs $21.89, how much would you leave for a tip? Now, I know most of you probably go out to restaurants, and if your parents leave a tip, they might say, I'm going to leave a $5 tip or whatever. But here we're working just to understand a percentage. Some restaurants you go to, they will actually add the tip in, and they call that gratuity. So sometimes they just automatically add it in as a percentage. So here, we ultimately want to find out what 15% of $21.89 is. Okay, so once again, same concept that we used before. We're going to change our percent to its decimal form. So 0.15 of means times 21.89. So 0.15 times $21.89 gives me this on my calculator, 3.2835. So once again, remember, we're working money. We only want to see 2 places, so we look at the third place to say, will the 3 tell the 8 to become a 9 or stay an 8? It's going to stay an 8. So you would want to leave a $3.28 tip if you were going to leave exactly 15%. Okay, now most of us would probably say we're either going to leave $3 or $4 or maybe $3.50. We probably won't dig in and find exactly 28 cents. Okay, but for this activity, we're practicing that concept. Okay, so I want you guys to try one because once again, tip is very similar to what we just did. So if you want to leave a 12% tip on a meal that costs $50.21, how much would you leave for the tip? So go ahead and pause your video and work your way through finding 12% of $50.21. Okay, you should have gotten $6.03 if you rounded it correctly. Okay, on your calculator, it was 6.0252, so that 5 would tell the 2 to become a 3. So $6.03. Now, most likely you would probably just leave the $6, okay? Okay, so now we're gonna work a little bit with commission. And commission is what people get paid. So for example, in the car industry, people that sell cars get paid commission usually. Sometimes they get an hourly rate, but then they also maybe get so much, like a percentage off of every car that they sell. People in realty, so selling houses or land, they get paid commission. They get paid a certain percentage on the sale of that house, okay? So here it says, what is the commission on a sale of a $69,000 car if the commission rate is 8%? So we're still using the same concept, it's just now they're using the word commission. Okay, so this is how much is somebody gonna get paid for selling that car. So we're still gonna do the same concept. We wanna find out 8% of $69,000. Okay, so 0.08 times 69,000. Okay, so this is what maybe if somebody's mom or dad worked at the car dealership and they sold this car. So 0.08 times 69,000 gives me $5,520. Hey, not a bad paycheck to take home for selling one car. Okay, but you have to remember in those industries, they don't sell one car every single day, and 8% might be kind of a high percentage. I'm not really sure on that, but still, if you're figuring out 8% of that number, that's a pretty decent paycheck to take home. Okay, so commission is what that person's getting paid for selling that vehicle. So here's the situation on the sale of a house. Okay, and I will tell you in Emmitsburg, usually they're getting paid 6, 7, or 8% commission on the sale of a house. So it says, what is the commission on a sale of a $123,000 house if the commission rate is 5%? So I want you to go ahead and pause your video and find out what 5% of $123,000 is. So find out how much this person's gonna get paid for selling that house. Find out that commission. Pause your video and work your way through this. Okay, this realtor would have gotten paid $6,150 for selling that house that was $123,000 at 5%. Now in Emmitsburg, like I said, they're usually getting paid a higher percentage. So not too bad for selling one house, right? If you get to take home that much money, of course, you would then have to pay some taxes. So you probably, or you wouldn't take home that much, but once again, not too bad for the sale of one house. So remember, for tips, sales tax, and commission that we just got done working with, you're finding that percent of whatever the number is that they're giving you. Make sure that you're paying attention to the wording. Are they asking you for a total? Because if they're asking you for the total, you need to add in your answer that you had gotten working with the percent onto whatever the other amount was. Okay, for commission, you probably won't be working with finding a total. If anything, it would be at a more advanced level. You might be subtracting that off of the sale of the house to maybe see how much the people that sold the house are going to receive in money. But commission, usually they'll just have you find how much that person was getting paid. Good luck with this, and just remember, you're finding, usually when you're working with percent, you're multiplying between that and the number given.